one of the biggest legacy that I think we'll leave at Chint is the amount of jobs that have been created with our partners. I mean, I just am so excited about the thousands of jobs that get created by our partners and by the jobs we've created inside the company and outside the company, the American construction jobs. I'm so excited about that. I think our legacy though, as a, from an environmental standpoint, being involved in 20,000 projects, I know we're certainly further advancing the climate goals compared to when we started at CPS. And I'm excited about that as well.
Bryan Wagner is now the general manager and president of CPS America. And we've talked a little on the show about some of the modes of operation that he's instilled into the leadership program here at CPS. I want to give you more of a backstory to Bryan and how he rose to take a leadership role at an organization that, as we mentioned in a prior conversation, has been referred to as GE-esque. So as a large corporation, what's it like to run a regional division? And how do you operate a team that goes from 10 to 100, from 4 customers to 1,000? What does it look like to institute a spirit of continuous improvement and curiosity, education, and a culture that feels like a family? We'll talk about that and more on today's episode of SunCast. If you have not yet subscribed, what are you waiting for? If you're on YouTube, the button's right down there. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of those other players, well, it's pretty easy to ensure that every week, twice a week, this shows up in your earballs and you are more informed. We're here to help you feel more educated, feel like you too can enter into the fray, be on the front lines, well-equipped. That's what we're about here at SunCast. We're going to get into it. Let's get down to business and get ready to tune up your skills, solo warriors, as we tune into another powerful conversation here on SunCast. Bryan, thanks for having us here at your headquarters in Texas. We're just outside Dallas, a place called Richardson. If you haven't had an opportunity to visit, I highly recommend that you do so. And you guys got quite an operation here. It's impressive.
Yeah. Thanks for coming today. We appreciate having you in.
Yeah, man. It's funny. I see you in so many different scenarios. I feel like a weight of seriousness just came over you.
Yeah, I've been told I've been too serious at times. So
I see you in the more lighthearted moments.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of times, business is a competitive sport. So
yes.
It depends on what period of the day you're in, or month or quarter. Right? Yeah.
We're going to come back to the competitive sport part. I like to open with a quote, and I happened to be on a Zoom call this past weekend, a celebration of life that actually was something that was really touching. I don't know how many of our viewers, listeners are familiar with the history of Solar Energy International, but one of the co-founders, Johnny Weiss, is actually in his final days, and he's had such a legacy. And one of Johnny's quotes I'm going to use today, it is, "Follow those with a fire in their belly." And it has quickly become one of my favorite quotes. Johnny Weiss, of course, is a legend. He co-founded Solar Energy International, one of the most well-known global training organizations. In many ways, he is like a coach for so many that have been trained up in how the solar industry works. I believe that you often quote one of your favorite coaches. Do you have any favorite quotes that come to mind?
Yeah, I think Dr. Barry Davis is a leadership consultant to us now. I think going on year number 4 coming up, and one of his favorite sayings, he has many, is "Some will, some won't, so what?" And I think we use that a lot inside the company.
Yeah.
More to do with, it really could be applied to any type of role.
For sure.
Yeah.
But certainly I can see that in the sales context, right? Your obligation is to present the opportunity, present the offer.
Yeah.
Some will like it, some won't. So what? You got to keep moving. You're looking for the ones that will, not the ones that won't.
Well, I would say we rarely use it in that context, if ever have I. It's more been used inside the company.
Yeah.
As, hey, we like to say follow up, or follow people and follow their success versus follow up with them. So
I could see that. Some will do what it takes.
Yeah.
Some won't do what it takes.
So what? So I think Barry's more talked to us about the performance side.
Yeah.
He's a performance coach at heart. And we focus a lot on performance and competition, right? Sometimes the competitive spirit that we are as a company can even lead to, being, I've certainly had it in my career, being too competitive, right, for your own good. So I think, we like to say that in any department because we're all, in a way, bringing each other to greatness, right?
Yeah, I like that. We do know a lot about competition and competition at the highest levels. One of my favorite stories is how you were one game away from the Little League World Series. I want to know, what does it feel like for those of us who haven't yet achieved even that level of modicum of success? Talk to me about the life lesson as a young person, getting that close to something that big as a child, and how that carried through in your life.
I won't say how many years ago it was,
Fair.
but I will promise you that a best friend of mine sent a text to a group of us this week, no joke, I think yesterday, it was yesterday, the day before, about how he was driving through Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and how, it still gets you going.
Yeah.
I think I'd send something back to the effect of, continuing to push through whatever we were talking about there as friends. And, we're definitely a chill group. It's definitely not a competitive group that way. It's certainly been competitive over the years, but I think I was able to meet, his name is Todd Frazier. I played against him in college, but I also played him in high school. And really, I played against his brother more in the Little League World Series. They went on to become famous, Toms River Little League. We went on to become this team you never heard of, but we were right there. We basically beat them, and they had to come back to state finals, beat us twice, and then they went up. They ran the thing from there. And it was a good life lesson in terms of what a team is, really, because my father was a coach, Little League coach, with one of my best friends, best man at my wedding's father. And they're still really good friends today. Me and my friend are still really good friends today. And, a lot of that team, I just ran into somebody 20 years later. Oh, I'm not supposed to say 20 years. All these years later, I just ran into a friend, and our daughters were doing gymnastics. And I haven't seen him probably since Little League.
Wow.
And we had this bond that was like, it gets me going. Yeah. Because something about that team, something about their performance. If the ball goes this way or that way a little bit, you can see how your future would be. It affects everything. Everything affects everything.
Sports has a way of separating the wheat from the chaff, but also helping understand that no, unless you're an individual sport, we both wrestled as well. But in team sport, no one person wins the game. The pitcher doesn't win the game. Catcher doesn't win the game. Yeah. Center fielder doesn't win the game. Shortstop. Yeah. Doesn't win the game. Yeah. Although Derek Jeter would argue otherwise.
Probably not.
Yeah. Cal Ripken wouldn't. He certainly would say that he was a piece of a larger vision. I like to believe that those of us, at least, who did participate in sports through childhood, certainly have a sense of that team spirit. That I recognized in college that it was something that allowed me to. I noticed that there were people that just didn't play well with each other. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it starts probably way before athletics, even in the sandbox, and learning how to adapt. I see my kids, my two daughters, arguing in the pool and different things, and it's those lessons. How do you play well as a team and also perform individually? And it's always a lot of times both.
You grew up in New Jersey. Was it a small, immediate family?
Yeah. I grew up. My parents still live in the same house. So it's my sister and I, my parents. It was a small little nucleus we started with that. From my perspective, is just bigger family now, even stronger today. And family's definitely at the heart of who I am, and kind of why I do what I do.
A lot of folks that I find are sales leaders later in life have at some point demonstrated some level of hustle, cutting yards, selling, retail, wholesale pieces of candy their parents bought from Costco or Sam's Club, whatever. Yeah. Was there anything like that for you as a child?
I think for me, my father was very adamant about not being complacent with being good at one thing. So, he's very, demanding, I'd say, in terms of discipline and in terms of education. And then, that got applied to really on the field. And I didn't do 3 sports. I did 3 sports throughout, but then, it was many other sports you're trying to do. And I think, yeah, it was probably his, more my father, I'd say, work ethic that I always tried to learn from. Mm-hmm. I didn't exactly want to get into what he did. He really, he was a carpenter.
Yeah.
So I think your father was a carpenter.
He was, indeed.
And so I think we shared that bond at some point. And I think, he just grew up. I worked for him at times. He threw me off jobs at times. And
been there.
He would be the one that'd be 12 o'clock, it would be lunch, 12:30, you'd be back on the job. And not 12:31, and those kind of little things, because later in life he had his own business. No one had to tell him where to go, what to, but he had that discipline, and I think that hard work, and probably one of the only ones that I saw work as hard, if not harder, who my mother's still working today, and just a grinder. And I think both of them taught me a lot about the hard work. But honesty, integrity, hard work, that's family, and I think that's what, our little nucleus started as, and we still work hard on that today.
When you think back on what young Bryan Wagner imagined or dreamed as a career, was there a path that you thought you would go down that you ended up not following?
Inverter from day one. No, no, certainly not inverters. I definitely wanted to be a baseball player. I mean, that probably was all the way until I had 2 shoulder surgeries my freshman year of college, which pretty much squashed that dream.
Yep.
I don't think I've ever really regret anything there or even think about that. A lot of times thinking in the past is just kind of, to me, a little bit of a waste of time. You don't want to be too much vision, too much future. It's trying to be today, trying to operate the business today, trying to operate the next couple weeks,
Yeah. I believe that everything does happen for a reason. And I wonder, as you look back over the earlier parts of your career, I noticed things like Viacom. Were there any things that you look at now that were in some way either a dead end or a false start? And I'm curious, even in that sort of evaluation, are there skills that you acquired there that ultimately became valuable later in your career? Yeah,
I think, again, you're trying to always chase, I'd say, the greatness, and whoever you're following, history teaches you a lot, even in wars. I mean, there's many things to take from history. So I think trying to follow, whatever path I was interested in, I'm sure you've done this, bounced around a lot with where you're going, what's your direction. And I think, early in my career, I was actually started in baseball business, started in that business. I kind of needed to get out of that world that I knew so well, because the only world I really started to know was athletics. And I just needed to challenge myself, went into New York, I worked at MTV in Times Square. It was a lot of fun. I think at that time is when solar, the first opportunity came about, and I had a couple friends that were in solar, and just ended up leaving MTV, quitting my job, taking a job there that really wasn't even a job, jumping on roofs. I think it was there I kind of learned, okay, if you can sell, then you'll make a difference, right? You'll make a difference. And we started installing solar on families' homes, small commercial. It was so impactful. I was like, it wasn't about, at that point I was negative. So I was like, all right, I'll leave New York. I'll go to Princeton, New Jersey, and I'll go work. It was like a Home Depot program.
Right.
And I found out a couple weeks after I quit.
This was a BP dealer, right?
Yeah, a couple weeks after I quit, unfortunately, somehow those folks ended up not paying me and my couple friends. And it was a tough spot. But I think that was so valuable. Like, I wouldn't have traded that time, because that was the time where you literally had no job and you really had interest in solar, which there was really no jobs.
Yeah, this is circa 2008.
So I just remember a couple of my friends at the time, my family, everyone being like, solar, but I just
really?
Yeah, I just believed. And I definitely, I saw the business side, but I was certainly coming at it from the technology, the environmental. That was really where my interest was. The business side was exciting, but there was really no business. So luckily I just was able to kind of persevere and break through there. But I think from there I was like, all right, I got into a company called Alteris, which got acquired by RGS, Real Good Solar, famous residential brand. And, I was fortunate enough to become #1 in sales. I did that several times.
Yeah.
And
At Altair's.
yeah, I mean, I became number one at many companies along the way, including here at Chint, where, you know, I think I've always said, if you make a good product, if you support the product, like if you run a good operations, then the customers will come back and buy.
Right.
Really, you're not selling at that point, you're running the business.
Yeah, relationship management and repeat purchases.
And operations. So I've always focused it that way.
Customer service. I want to back up.
Yeah.
You worked at MTV?
Yeah.
What did you do at MTV?
That was fun. Inside sales. Inside sales.
So that means you didn't get to go out on set.
No. No, I mean, I think that was still the days where TRL was just finishing up. So I can't remember exactly.
Was that ad sales? Like what?
Yeah, advertising sales. So we worked on Spike TV, TV Land, Comedy Central. It's 4 different networks, had a few different leaders I worked for. And they were, you know, it was a very big business. They were processing orders faster than I could process them. I was frankly not very good at the job. Yeah. But I was learning the basics. I still file today from that system I learned way back then, where all of our orders that come in at the company, I still file in a traditional old school filing for it. We have virtual and in person. But I love the in person. I love printing something out and really understanding what this solar project looks like. Yeah. Or what you know, try to get your arms around what the details are.
I love that because so often young folks, they miss the diamonds in the mine, right? Like they look right past them and all they see is a coal field, right? It's like they're in the dirt. They're just working. Like it's my first job. Nobody appreciates me. I've got all the grunge work. Instead of recognizing that there's a lot of blocking and tackling, learning how to take literal orders from customers, learning what a file structure looks like. I can tell you that having jumped straight out of grad school into the startup life, I knew none of that.
Right.
In fact, my co-founder in my first business, this guy, Ed, had come from Philips, and he would routinely be like, what are you doing? Like, why have you don't even have a structure for your inbox and your email. And I was like, hey, give me a break. Email just
And prior to all that, I actually started as baseball and instruction and coaching, high school coaching and stuff. And then what I found was at the facility I was at, I found out, you know, I did a good job in operations, all those things. I was running a large team. I was assistant GM of the business. So I was learning a lot about the business, but I realized the foundations and the business basics I didn't know. Yeah. So you could go back to school, and I said, you know what, that's where I was, you know, I had good mentors at that time.
At what point was this?
This was prior to MTV. When I just graduated, I went into the baseball business. Right. Had a family friend in that business. Which
this was the retail business that you.
This was the
the coaching business. I get it. Your first one.
Yeah. The facility now is called Domination. Just got sold to Cal Ripken. Big famous facility now. 6,000 teams a year or something go through there. And I was basically became working with a lot of minor league baseball players, and these folks were all folks I was running teams. We started one team, we got up to 18 teams, all travel and all this. It was a really good business. But I realized at the fundamental level, the basics, you know, I studied accounting or studied these things in business school, but you didn't apply these things. So I really felt like that was a little too advanced for me. And I kind of felt I needed to get more hands-on, you know, early experience. And that's when I started the brand was called Finish First at the time, the business in parallel with that, which I've learned to control sometimes when you get your ambition gets too far ahead of where you really are, you know, you're doing too many things, right? And I think also through, like, maybe you were saying about inexperience and things, the Warren Buffett side of circle of competence, right? We've talked about circle of competence is, you know what you know, but do you know what you don't know? And it's very important to know what you don't know. And I think he uses the analogy of Ted Williams as a baseball reference. If you're hitting this pitch that's right here, you'll bat 400 or even more. And if you're hitting this pitch down here, you're probably batting 200. So don't swing at the pitch down here, go here. And that's what I do in the business today.
Understand your circle of competence.
Yeah, I focus in sales and marketing and operations and in really products. I love products. I've always been obsessed with technology and making sure that, you know, people can buy things in a simple manner, right? Because you made the technologies.
So what I heard you say is that your circle of competence is particularly sales and marketing within the product sector. operations you added in there. I'm wondering how wide the circle of competence can be.
So
I
if
just
you
want to
picked the
understand this
three, it would
analogy.
be sales, products, marketing, right? Those three go together for sure. But again, running the operations, running your, back in the day, it was running your first 5 projects, 10 projects,
right?
Making sure they're successful, printing out the paperwork, filing, all the basics. And then, nowadays it's a much bigger operation.
Yeah.
But those are the 4 I focus on day in and day out because of growth. That's my job, is the growth of the vision, the growth. Whereas, here in this office, James Oswald, who we just spent time with, circle of competence for him is different than me.
Yeah.
And I put the best leaders like James in a place to let him go do his thing. Don't get involved. But if you're kind of in my lane, you may have more involvement because I'm
expect some more micromanagement.
I would say yes at times. Yeah, I would say at times, or really learning the process. Once you understand the details in the process, it's go.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if we're getting things approved, whatever that happens to be, and you're trying to work on an approval, it's like, hey, I think you said earlier, 2 sets of eyes. We would call it 3 sets of eyes. The triangle offense, is a little bit like we're keeping each other accountable.
Yeah. Come back to the triangle in a minute. When you were selling for Alteris Real Goods, that was predominantly out trying to convince homeowners, business owners, to buy solar.
Yeah.
I think that
loved that.
It's common in the industry that there becomes a sort of a decision moment where folks decide, I either want to be B2B, focused on helping folks get the equipment they need or the services they need, or I want to be B2C.
Sure.
How did you make that decision? Or was it made for you? How do you think back now on that career moment where you realize, okay, I have a fork in the road. I really need to decide. And my sales skills could be used anywhere.
The folks that were involved with our BP Solar program, where we didn't get paid, actually came to the company at Alteris after I was number 1 in building the business. And then they put a sales manager in place. And when they did that, I said, hey, that's kind of odd because of what happened. And, listen, I don't have any ill will. It made me who I am today, but certainly I'm going to go do something else now.
Yeah, I'm not going to work for these guys.
Good luck. And at that time, that was a tough decision, but that's when AE came about, and they liked my background in services. So they hired me.
And you were recruited into AE.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I was hired by Joe Brotherton because of our baseball background. Joe
Were you recruited by Joe or by a
Joe.
headhunter?
No, by Joe.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think they were probably working in parallel. Yeah. But and so Joe came out to have dinner. We got lucky. Joe's become a friend nowadays, even a customer at some point. So Joe's awesome. And
so a lot of folks here won't know what acronym you just used. AE, Advanced Energy. Sure. We're OGs back in the day when SatCon was number 1, then AE took the title, and so at the time you were working on, what's the largest project you'd worked on before you went to AE?
Oh, before AE?
Yeah, solar project.
100 kilowatt.
100 kilowatt.
Yeah.
And what was the smallest AE inverter?
Well, AE really only did commercial and utility. I'd say a 30 kilowatt.
30.
They had a single phase for a short time, but
yeah. But really, you jumped from your large commercial experience being 100 kilowatts to
or residential 3 kilowatt or 7 kilowatt,
to a utility focused product. How did you make that leap as a salesperson?
Not well. My first week at RE Plus, or back then called SBI. I want to say it was Vegas, 2010 or 11, somewhere in that range, was just overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I know some folks inside our company have had that same experience when you're just overwhelmed by 100 of the smartest people in the room you've never been in, and around thousands of people. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. But at the same time, I maybe didn't appreciate it at that time like I do now.
Yeah.
But I was around the best talent I've been around, and
you had Ed and Jack. Who else was there at the time? There's some legends that
John
were.
Foster was definitely a mentor of mine from a technical perspective. I mean, I went to school. I went to the school of AE, which had the best people teaching about inverters. That when I started, they just wanted me in services, selling services around the equipment.
How about that?
So I did that for we sold out. Basically, we oversold. we had too much work. So they said, hey, come interview for Inverters.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how, Kevin Purdy was really my key mentor that taught me the inverter business. But John and Kevin and even Ephraim later, Casey Miller, a lot of these names, Tucker Roberti, just when I say phenomenal experience, just, I mean, all these are running large businesses today or doing,
I think it's really interesting though, because we'll come back around to this when we talk a bit about how you've structured CPS. We've talked about your sales acumen and that part of the grooming of your career. I didn't know this part, that when you went to AE, you actually went into the service side of the business.
Under Joe.
But it makes perfect sense now that I know that you worked with Joe. However, like I look at it as like, what is the skills stacking that happens over the course of a career? And how does that manifest itself in the latter part of your career or the mid part of your career where you take on leadership? Where you take on leadership roles, right? And, for those who are unfamiliar, CPS, while you dominate in sales, one of the things that you are known for by customers is the customer service side of the business.
Yeah. I would say we dominate sales maybe by market share. I don't think we ever feel we dominate sales. Like you were asking me today, it's like, well, I'm focused on today and kind of this month, this quarter. But I think, services, what Joe didn't tell me in the interview is that he was leaving 30 days later, which he did, and he handed me the keys. And that was really interesting. And then it's when Casey and I started to work closely together. He got involved, and it was just an awesome experience. Like 300 megawatts or so we had getting under management, and back then that's like probably saying 3 gigawatts today.
Yeah.
So it was wild, and we just had the best technicians. Tom Martin, a lot of these famous folks now today.
Yeah. How do you compare the experience in the early days? This is a decade ago. Trying to sell, at the time, you were selling, large commercial into what was the burgeoning utility sector, like the largest utility projects we were selling in the late aughts to early teens was, 50 megawatt. A 70 megawatt in FPL territory, right? It was like the biggest. Everybody was targeting these like,
big.
Tampa Electric and FPL and some of these big projects in districts that were more or less being managed by the utility. Some Duke projects. How do you think about the evolution of the industry from a technical perspective, having been on the sales side for more than a decade? Kind of how the customer has evolved?
Good question. How the customer has evolved. I think they've built many projects, right? In some cases, hundreds of projects some of these installers have done now. And their crews are more effective, more efficient. They're they care about the space in the wire box, all the things that we try to marry up with their feedback to improve. Things have gotten, as you know, a lot more lightweight, a lot more efficient. It is amazing. I think James and I were talking about the technology advancement. Him coming from a lab background to today, we're upset with 99% efficiency. I think 30 years ago, they never would have seen that in power electronics. So I think companies like ours where I think, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the technology pricing, the cost curve coming down as rapidly is wild. I don't think people would have predicted an inverter would be basically free at this point, considering how important it is in the thing. For us, we've always looked at, hey, we get the hardware deployed and we're servicing it.
Right.
And that's kind of how we've always looked at it. So expecting that you got to operate on razor thin margins, which we do, has been our market, kind of some of our strength at times.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, because a lot of the manufacturers that went out of business believing that they were going to operate like semiconductor companies with high margins and that they would recover those high margins.
Right.
And what's borne out is both in module sales and in inverter sales, the margin only got compressed and never expanded. And if it did, it was very momentary. In the case of solar modules, at least. And to your point, what I heard you say is the buyers have become more, they've evolved in their understanding. They're more sophisticated.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. And your focus necessarily is on servicing the product where you have additional revenue stream and keeping those customers.
Yeah.
So lifetime value of a customer rather than for sale of a customer. I feel like when we first got in the industry, it was land grab. It was who can we acquire, right? Like that growth from 5 customers to 1,000 customers when when you began to take more the leadership role here at CPS. Can you talk to me about the process internally at CPS of deciding that it was time to grow the team? And are there mental models that helped you think about developing the culture, the teamwork required, the division of labor to make that leap? Because the reality is that Chint at the time was operating as a division of a foreign company, and it sort of operated that way, like get a beachhead, have great leadership, but keep it small and nimble, right?
Yep.
Hard to say that 100 team members is small and nimble at this point.
Yeah.
But it's an intentional growth to address the service side of the business. There's some things that you may or may not want to share about how you guys have structured service and what you think is important and how you go about product development. But really what I want to know sort of before that is, give me a sense of the DNA that is in the business now and that was sort of grown in that petri dish of we got to go from 5 to 1,000.
Probably around COVID when that broke out, that was probably one of the times that I started to get more into the leadership side of being visible inside the company. And, when you turn around and you're like, hey, who's really making this decision? And you realize you are. Right. It's a lot of responsibility and there's a lot of families at stake. I feel like that's, you kind of feel that personal responsibility for that. So I think we started with like the foundation, right? We used to call it like, what's our CPS transformation going to look like? You got to create all good leadership's got to create that vision. And, then you start with your culture. This stuff sounds very simple, but you have to work so hard at it to actually like make it so it's not lip service, it's very genuine. Right. And I'd say like the transformation of the team happened to be with the people, the process, the products. They all needed to basically, we had to change our mindset. We had to really
talk about that mindset a minute.
Again,
give me a sense of old versus new.
Yeah, I've studied winning, as you know, and I've studied championship culture. Dr. Barry Davis being a leadership consultant, it's the first thing we did. I
remember you told me an inverter dog is what you said you guys called yourselves.
Yeah, well, we read Shoe Dogs, so we started each other inverter dogs. Yeah, we started a lot of the transformation of, we'd start with James and I here, leadership meeting of 2. Let's have a meeting. What are we meeting about? James is like, come on, what are we meeting about? We work together every day. It's like, no. We need to transform the way we do things and the mindset of which we do them. And we have to, and it's like, I remember James, he would say it if he was here. Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah, sure. But nowadays, meaning this innovation center, here we're at, we feature CPS Labs, CPS Knox Center behind us, CPS Labs. The whole idea of making the right products that the customers want, that's why we needed this facility. Then we needed to service the products. But I think, even yourself or even your small leadership, we're a little skeptical. Can we really transform and turn things around? Right. Like the leadership prior to us, them leaving that's very damaging to our company, right? It's really tough to recover. Yeah. And we had basically Ed and Casey were 2 force in the industry that were very well known. Yeah. So it took a while. It took a while to really, but it's someone like Barry coming in and focusing on our team. Okay, let's start with something basic. Yeah. What does CPS mean? Yeah. We picked out of 100 words: collaboration, passion, service. Little things like this, but then ingraining these techniques and working. You have to go to work. Right. You have to transform, right, and show up. Yeah. Barry Davis has a saying: 90% of life is showing up. Yeah. Right. So you're just showing up and showing up again next day. And all of a sudden, before you know it, maybe not the first year, maybe within the first year and a half, everybody was showing up, and everybody's showing up in a big way in every department, and everybody's looking to improve everything. And then your departments start showing leadership, and then the leaders have leaders, and it's just been contagious. But I'd say I started with winning formula. How do we win? Luckily, we were already number 1. Yeah. We were already figuring out how to win in a smaller category. Now we wanted to take that same recipe and apply it to everything we did. And we're still not done.
Something I've remarked about CPS America, because I've been able to observe how this organization has grown, not just here, but our friend Carlos when he opened in Latin America. Just to see how the company thinks about the brand, the market presence, et cetera. I would call CPS phase 1 or like CPS 1.0 very personality-led organization.
Okay.
Right? You had a dynamic duo that were this was their brainchild. They helped to like birth this business, and that is very much like a startup. It's very personality-led. Okay. And then CPS 2.0 was very process-led instead of personality-led.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And what I see now, as I've gotten to know more of the organization, 100 strong, is product-led, right? Okay. So personality kind of gets the name out there. The process establishes that growth potential from 5 to 1,000. And then we'll talk about your labs, if you'd like, at some point. That product-led organization really helps the customer integrate the company without thinking. And here's maybe the way I think about it. If I'm a developer, before CPS was Ed and Casey, right? And then
there was some prior to him, or
sure,
prior to them, but Lum was
we're going to simplify it.
Scenes,
we're going to simplify it. And then in 2.0, CPS was a CNI inverter manufacturer, right? Like 3-phase string inverter. And then now in 3.0, what is the customer going to say CPS is, right? Is
the whole package now.
The whole package.
I mean, really, because a business is a business. And I always say we are running a business. It sounds probably simple, oversimplified, but it really is simple. If you look at the business side, you have to run a solid, strong business. Each and every month, each and every quarter, we have to have success. And so winning and then building that is important.
Talk about the triangle you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so I'd say inside the company, we have really, one of the things we did with Barry, we figured out, okay, from the founder, they had this Speedy system. We created our Lightspeed system.
Who had the Speedy system?
That was the McDonald's, right? So we have a couple, like what we started doing early on was apply all these learnings. And really it was my individual learnings, I'd say, that I started to apply that I might have learned 15, 20 years ago or whatever it was that I started to apply. Okay, let's get the team to, Power Play, Elon's book. I read that book like 10 times before I signed it to the team. And then it's like, hey guys, do you know what a whale is? Okay, inside the company, you have to have the product. It's got to be, that was his 3.
Explain it.
That was his Tesla 3. He wanted the car for the masses, like Henry Ford. So it was like, okay, that's more of a study of history. You don't just study the business. It's kind of, but if you can get the team rallied around that, then they understand what the whale means today. Now, we don't have a whale yet in play. So the customers will experience that soon, I hope. But we've called it Central Inverter Killer. We're not there yet. The technology's not there yet. Yeah, killer whale is maybe better. But the technology's not there yet. The physics aren't there yet. So what we're doing now is our 5060 has been a workhorse machine that did go to the masses. If you think about solar, 20,000 projects, it does apply. So I think we've used these things underneath the Lightspeed that aren't just the triangle. The triangle came from, maybe the concept might have come from one of the books, 11 Rings. Maybe, I think so. Again, it's like you're combining all these things, and that one's about like having levels of accountability so that 2 people or 1 person isn't going off away from our Lightspeed teamwork, and keeping them not only accountable but collaborative. And hey, we're working together as a team. Let's do it this way. So we have also we have the McDonald's. We also learned about the McDonald's sales model. 87% of sales coming from 3 items: soft drinks, burgers, fries. Let's keep ours simple. For us, we say we have the 208 480, which is basically 1,000-volt products.
This is like your workhorse CNI product.
Yeah, we have the 600-volt engines now, which is approaching probably a gigawatt this year deployed. And then we have the 800-volt, which is new for utility. If we really say those 3, they probably account, well, I know exactly, they account for about 60% of our sales. So we did kind of take a lot of these formulas underneath the Lightspeed and apply not 1, 2, I mean, there's 20 more methodologies that we use that we're not talking about. But if we think to simplify that, that's a few of them.
If anyone is listening and they're not sure, because we haven't gone into depth about Lightspeed. There's an entire episode that I really hope folks will go listen to, where we really unpack the Lightspeed methodology at CPS and how you think about structuring the internal learning and process orientation so that folks get on board with an idea and acculturate it into the, like you said, into their mindset. Can you give me a tangible example though of the triangle? Like, give me an example from product or maybe from Anton's team. Like, how would a triangle work? The triangle offense is the concept.
It's complex.
Give it a shot.
To think of specific examples, I'd probably need to think of today as current. So our marketing partner here, thank you for that, by the way. It's exciting to be working together. And when you surround yourself with great people, that's another thing that is just contagious inside a company. Again, I think the whole Lightspeed you cannot do if you learned it today and you try to learn it in some book. Yeah. You have to, if I didn't do that business for 10 years, right, it'd be
it's
like,
the process of continuous
you
learning.
can't just do it from theory. But I think you coming here today, there's all these logistics, there's all these things that have to happen. I just know it happens. We have a guy, Bryan Clemente, on the team. He's world class. And sometimes he's so world class and fast that he's moving faster than we can move. Yeah. And sometimes it's more about you have someone on your team, Jeremy, who's tremendous, right? Sometimes it's about, hey, me, Nico, and Bri need to rap a little bit or like get together a little bit. Or you, Jeremy, and Bri, but if it's 2v2 or we say 1v1 and we're trying to figure things out, it's hard to figure out even logistics. Where are you going to go eat tonight, right? It's like, hey, if I think this, you think that, let's get that third opinion. I know that sounds simple, but we do that in everything we do. If we apply it to a real on the day, something that happened today, I'd have to think back. You have a call that comes in. We're out there doing a tour through our facility. A call comes in. James Whipple, one of our folks that goes to the field working with R&D, who's here from overseas, those two are working together with the customer. They could even form the triangle. Right. I mean, there's just, what we say is inside you had 100 people inside the company, maybe 900 if you count the parent. Right. How many, and we don't really focus too much on it with them at this point, but our 100 people, how many triangles can you run at one time? When you really bring the customer into that process and you go fast with them, that's where the magic is. That's truly where, when the customers, project managers, know Fabiola, know James Whipple, know the right triangles to run with our brand, now you're really running like a business and not like, hey, we're in charge or, I'm not saying that wasn't at times what we needed to do to lead. And our personalities came out. And Anton, James, Z now, many of the leaders inside the company. But it's mostly trying to follow that process so that it stays smooth.
Do you remember a decision that was made around culture, mindset, direction that was particularly pivotal in the last few years in terms of establishing this, CPS 2.0, moving into a new phase of the business?
A lot of times we have this saying inside the company, you'll see it RE Plus coming up, is America's most connected service provider. America's most connected inverter service provider. It's like, we're working on that. But no one knew what that meant. And I think everyone in the company now knows what that means. It means that we will keep your plant up and running better than the rest of the companies that you're considering, right? Our service platform, our brand, our inverter, and our service, is something that is unmatched. So I think to answer your question, in terms of one thing, yes, every person on the team affects the rest of the team. So I would say when you started in the beginning in the really small team, it's like who was the key? Me and James. Who's key stakeholder and how did they lead things? And like I said, circle of competence. James does his thing, Navy guy. He's got total command of the ship, and you just let him do his thing. And then it's like, hey, what happened here? But it's more like the strong teammates then become strong mentors almost in a way. And we push each other, we grow each other, so the strong mentors inside the company, outside the company, strong, partners, all right, all kinds of strong partners. It's a team. Like, you probably feel that way a little bit more than when
increasingly
than when we first, maybe started working together a little bit more.
Talk about the growth process of moving into an era where you realize that customer service is tantamount to success, and how you integrate that service mentality into product development.
The feedback loop's critical for us. We a lot of times go to different offices, different states. We're flying all around trying to get that voice of the customer. But we launched Innovation Center so we can take it one step further, which is really, we've done this for years, but in a bigger way now. We've invested millions of dollars into the technology for when the products fail out in the field, we bring them back here to study them. Why did they fail? We have folks like James Whipple, Fabiola, Stephen Ballinger, the best in the field at what they do, which is product innovation, and trying to figure out, hey, how do we test this thing to failure? Why did it fail? Get that back into R&D feedback loop. So Innovation Center features CPS Labs, which has a few different parts to it. The first part of it is working the product that's been out in the field and keeping the projects up and running, and reworking those units. Really, that repair is critical for us. It's a not more cost effective to do. We do it because of quality, reliability, and future product development. It helps us. And then the other part of it is really where the ideas come from. Hey, can we make that wire box different? Can we apply this new, this is failing all the time, this component, can we use a different component? And so it's the innovation that comes from CPS Labs being really two parts that really helps us.
Is it surprising to customers that you do a lot of this in-house?
Yeah, I think when they come here, we've probably had about we've probably had close to 300, 400, 500 customers come through this facility, and it's very impressive, I think, when they do, and they don't know about this.
Yeah, it's like your skunk works. This seems like a lot of overhead for a company with such tight margins. How do you manage that?
Like I said, winning is very important. Each and every month, the winning is very important to not necessarily survival, to the future. In order to generate cash and reinvest the cash into the future, you have to start with winning and generating. So I think that model, a lot of companies focus on, here's how we're going to grow. We're going to go spend all this investment. They don't think about the fundamentals of the business that month, that quarter, to generate cash on cash and make those investments opportunities, reinvest and build the brand of the future. So really back in the COVID days, we were struggling as a company that way, right? From the actual profitability side. Right now, we're really strong profitability. And I think that's
but you're investing in a lot of R&D. You're investing in a lot of product innovation, coming out with first of its kind, 600 volt, 250 kilowatt products, for example, that customers aren't necessarily expecting. They've told you that they think it would be great if somebody would do it. How do you, as a leader, marshal the resources to get that kind of product into a customer's hands in the face of being the first? Not everybody wants to be the first. Most people want to be a fast follower.
Right. That is really where the heart is at our customer. So what their voice, they're expressing to us, their feedback is really how right now our 250-600 is about how much they've wanted to continue to use the 600 volt products, the 100, 125 that's been out for years. We've had some challenges. It's no secret we've had challenges on that platform, as others have, with the 1500 volt DC input architecture and 600 volt AC for string inverters. But where some of our competitors, kind of maybe focus on new products, not the same platform, we went back in time and invested a ton of time and effort, and certainly financial, into the existing platforms. Through that, we actually broke through and found innovation. Our DC enhanced technology that's with the 250-600 volt will be talked about at RE Plus in a big, big way. And right now, the things that happen with 125 and others in that class, because we went through that, we're able to take those findings and apply it to new technology that we're deploying with the the product that we feel will be, as close to the whale as possible.
How have you grown in terms of managing the human capital, not just focused on selling? Like, it's not, you are now the president, the leader. Your job is to instill culture, to ensure collaboration, collective effort. How have you grown that way?
I would say I always try to put myself in the other person's shoes, like in that department's, like what's their perspective. It's not easy because you also have to make tough decisions. And I think a lot of times trying to balance the tough decisions with, what does the internal team need and what does the individual need? You can't always take care of all the needs.
Yeah.
So you just try to check as many boxes as you possibly can for everyone and for every department, every team member. But we certainly care. At times I've been told we care too much. I don't think you can care too much. And I think maybe one of the expressions recently we said was, we care more than others care, right? And that's kind of the main thing, is we care more than they care. So
yeah. You reached out recently, you texted me and said, hey, I really like that episode with Paula Glover. For those who haven't listened to it, it was one on specifically imposter syndrome. It was one that I still haven't gone back and listened to because I struggle with imposter syndrome every day. Where did that hit close to home for you? Like, how, as you've grown as a leader, what are the shadows that you've had to deal with?
I think everything's about timing, and I think you get the right people in your world at the right time. And if you just let the water flow, if you will, I think is probably the right analogy. You don't push things too far. You can push things a lot, right? You got to follow through with your commitments, but you let the water flow a little bit more. I think you get that with experience. I think the thing about imposter syndrome is you're really trying to force things, force the change, force the transformation, and it's, how come they don't buy in? How come they don't believe this will work? And everything you do does not work. Some of your ideas are the worst ideas. But if you're getting them right, I don't even know. In baseball, it's 3 out of 10. I don't think you can get it right in business 3 out of 10. But what is that percentage? I don't know. It's just you can't get every decision right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times the team that you work with, both internally and certainly at the customer level, they want you to get it right every time. So if you put yourself in their shoes, when you make a decision, if you really care, you really try to get it right every time.
I've heard the phrase used, and I'm not sure who it's attributed to, but this concept of strong opinions loosely held, like having conviction, but with being willing to change when presented with alternative facts. Where have you changed your mind on something that you at one point had a really strong conviction about, but when presented with data, you switched course?
Right now we're doing that. We are putting a more dedicated team on the utility business. I think for me, it was always about timing. Were we ready to focus and sacrifice our success and other things that got us here to get in this new segment? I believe the answer is no, but maybe I could have made decisions earlier in hindsight. And I think now, the phrase of dream big, focus small. I'm really trying to get a team dedicated to really focusing small, not on all these things. And I had a mentor that used to say, hey, stop chasing all the next shiny object. And I think we all do that. I think we all want to try to take on everything.
Yeah.
If you think about that circle of competence for anyone inside the company, in any company, in my opinion, become an expert. Become an expert at one thing. Become the thing you're really good at, that you'll do better than everyone else inside the company, and I think then you can take on the next thing.
I think it's interesting, the claim to fame for CPS is number one in 3-phase string inverter. It's a classic Venn diagram of where is your core competence, right? And the reason that 1 and 2 inverters in a commercial environment are a CPS inverter is because you realize that the gap, the blue ocean, was not just 3-phase inverters, but 3-phase string inverters, right? The commercial market where you could make an impact with an architecture known as string inverters, something that had historically been relegated to small systems, residential systems. And it is what has created not just a winning culture, but a winning company in the marketplace, one that where folks know you as a thing. It's kind of like being typecast, right? Like Matthew McConaughey was like the lead star in rom-coms for 2 decades, and he's like, I'm not doing them anymore, right? And you have to. I feel like you as a leader and your peers at other power conditioning companies, at other organizations that see the industry growing so fast in so many directions, have to struggle with this shadow of like, okay, I can go after other kinds of inverters, utility scale.
What are we known for?
Do we add batteries? Do we add transformers? What are we known for? How do we capture market share? How do we grow and satisfy our shareholders?
Sure.
Yeah, it's a daily struggle. One of the things I admire about the way that you put this organization together is that with things like the triangle offense focus, then people feel confident in questioning authority. Right? Who's got the right answer?
Yeah.
And they also collaborate in a way that helps keep everyone honest, right? No one's off on an island chasing a dream by themselves, right? Yeah. Which it plagues every organization at some point or another.
Yeah, or they feel they're out there on an island by themselves, right? Yep.
I know that you had a lot of coaches. Was there any advice that you feel served as foundational either early in your career or even later in your career? Somebody who spoke truth to you that you look back now and you're like, wow, that helped change the course of the way I operate.
I would say your daily grind of, so many of them, but putting my sales hat back on, driving up to that residential home or that small business, getting in your Zen state. Hey, I got to go in and I got to, it's perform. I mean, you got to perform because you got to be ready for what questions are coming. If you haven't done that, then, maybe you don't understand the reference. But I think getting still, getting quiet, and maybe going out and doing that thousands of times, maybe gets you better prepared to even as just asking or what. I think in sales, it's like, how do you get to know quick as possible?
Yeah.
But it goes for every department. How do you, circle competence? How do you get to what you're not doing inside a department very, very fast so that your department can speed up and do what it's asked to do and then work as the team? Because if you're trying to take it on, then you're trying to do these 7 other things, then no one's accountable.
Yeah.
So really, I'd say that was from my findings. And just to kind of go with what you're talking about there, but I guess my advice, probably what I said with Kevin Purdy, who said about the stop chasing the next shiny coin. A lot of times your phone rings. What do you do? Well, who it is? Let me pick it up. I've had to work on this so many times where I'm here right now. I have to be here right now.
Yeah.
I have to be present. I know there's things on my email, on my phone. I mean, there's like 17 forms of communication right now. Yeah. And I know every one of them that are communicating to me want communication back.
Right.
How do you do that? So I think if I focus what Kevin would say, just focus on where you are, focus on this customer that's in front of you and how we can perform better. What we've provided now is 100 people in the company, which I believe will continue to grow to provide a better business and brand, getting that loyalty, back in our transformation, that loyalty of the CPS brand. We actually needed a tribe to buy into that first before we could say anybody outside the company would buy in. But I think nowadays you definitely have some good CPS fans out there. I can think of many of them that, they're definitely friends at this point, but from a partnership perspective, you can go to them to say, hey, we're trying this new DC enhanced technology, which we rolled out like a year and a half ago.
Right.
And now we're about to roll out in a big way in the market.
Yeah.
And because of those partnerships, you can try things, you can do things, you can work together, and you can push the industry leaps and bounds ahead. There's more coming with this story. And I think what's going to be really cool is where we take that.
I remember Power One, when they were acquired by ABB, they were touting this like blade server technology, right? Like I felt like the whole industry in 2010 was going in this same like data center architecture where instead of having UPS systems in like one central mainframe. We would have blades of data storage like every data center around the world does. And yet we still see that the utility scale industry perpetuates the concept of a central inverter as the core architecture. Why do you think that is? And when do you anticipate that the design philosophy will evolve?
Well, that's in the U.S. It's central inverter. In other parts of the world, it's mostly string now.
Okay.
So we're probably a few years behind in terms of
like 2-3 years.
Yeah, I'd say we're starting to see it now. The design cycle has shifted to, maybe just a year ago, a handful of projects would have been presented to us, where right now we're probably talking on the neighborhood of half of the projects that are being designed in utility are looking at us.
Yeah.
So it's just game changer.
I mean, whether they're looking at you guys or others with string, my question is like, what is preventing them from conceptually moving beyond the central inverter technologies or sort of architecture to what feels like the logical redundancy of a string inverter system?
It's typically a labor situation. So if they can integrate the entire station, right? The entire inverter, transformer, everything on one pad. Bring everything in.
Because they're used to having all the power station in one area.
Yeah, if you're building a 500 megawatt site.
And so the mentality is like, oh, string inverters mean I've got one on the end of every one of my rows or something like that, which is complex from a wiring perspective. Got it.
So companies like ours that have launched the MV station, that still we ship string separate, but the MV station is taking on what the central would do. And now you're still having to deal with the labor challenge of string in the field. Yeah. But you can do it in different ways now. So meaning our 250 600 volt, it's both centralized string and distributed string or traditional string. So end of rows or however you look at your collection. Yeah. Centralized string is mimicking a central inverter plant. You have a DC combiner out in the field. Yeah. And you run your long home run back to the pad. So your actual inverter is right next to your MV station now. Yeah. And all your labor is right there. Yeah. Versus spread out in the field. Yeah. So I think, are
they all still going to be, they're all still manually mounted one by one on posts? Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, I've seen tons of like examples of probably CPS stations and SMA stations where it's like a big pad and like post after post of like.
Yeah. Yeah. We have something called an inline cluster where you can mount 3 of them. We provide. Okay. I think there's going to be some innovation that should happen there. Thanks for the advice. So I don't think we focus enough on that side of the equation where as we're winning in the engineering more and getting more involved as to what the customers need, I think you'll see us add more services around that or more scope around that.
Yeah, I feel like it's less a technology question at this point and more a marketing question. Like in what I've been explained,
it is because globally it doesn't make sense. Right. So I don't know if it's the investment tax credit here or it's the labor cost here. Yeah. We certainly,
or maybe it just needs to look more like a central unit in some way. Well, problems we can solve in another podcast. I wonder when you're not thinking about building a global dominant sales organization, what do you nerd out about?
Most of my kids.
Yeah?
Yeah, most of my kids.
Your daughters?
Yeah, my daughters. Now I have a son who's almost a year. So, I mean, they keep me plenty busy to be figuring out. My son, this morning he's down here with us. He was walking this morning, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, he's almost
like first steps?
Not first steps, but he's,
But that keeps you busy.
Definitely is like first 100 steps. So, I think that's where I'm, trying to keep that balance, right? Keep that balance going. But what other interests do I have? Yeah. I would say, really trying to get more, I'd say, more balance, learn about other things, right? Spend so much time learning about, business or leadership or technology or engineering or sales or all these things inside of a world where you said I have to shut a lot of things off to go that route. And maybe, I play a lot of golf, so certainly golf. I definitely need to study how to perform much better there. But yeah, a lot of different interests that, years ago invested in a space company, and you definitely invest a lot. So different, things I've done, but a lot of different interests, I'd say, outside of work.
You're a voracious reader. You mentioned some books that you've read 10 times. What are a few books that are on that category of like have read more than once and recommend highly?
Shoe Dog.
Mm-hmm.
Shoe Dog, 100%.
Yeah, Phil Knight.
To me, is the best business book around, and
Okay.
it's so many lessons in there about so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one.
Have you read Creativity Inc. by
No.
Ed Catmull?
No.
Yeah, so our friend Daniel Deuce, he sent me that book, and he is a similar voracious reader, and he said it's the best business book around. So I note when someone that I respect says, "Oh, best business book around." Right?
Yeah, you've read Shoe Dog?
I have listened to Shoe Dog. I consume through audio, but I would encourage you to check out Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull. He said it's the best business management book he's ever read. I was like, wow, that's saying a lot.
So Power Play?
Power Play, I have not read.
Okay, highly recommend that
And you said
one.
this is an Elon book?
Yeah, Elon's EV revolution, bet of the century.
How have you integrated this sort of this system or philosophy of continuous learning into the team?
Yeah, so I actually do think about this a lot. We have a continuous learning environment where we're always focused on training. Now, training we would rather have on demand nowadays versus, getting 40 people together or 100 people together and sit on a Zoom call. Everybody's busy. Everybody's got things they want to learn about. We try to get them into our similar mindset wherever we are as a company right then and there. I will usually find something we can follow or get behind. So we're going to RE+, we're reading something, and as a team, I think we got a book recommended to us from Barry Davis recently, one of our leadership coaches who recommended a book, and we're reading the book, and it's a way for the team to use analogies together. Yeah. In Shoe Dog, we have somebody on the team we call Johnson, and she loves it. She loves that we call her that, and she gets it. And I think if she didn't read the book, she'd be like, what the heck, but if she didn't read the book, they say 10% of people open the book. Yeah. So really what we're trying to do is get like 20%, 30% to open the book. And then if you can get that many people on the same page with these analogies, and when you say an analogy of something that happened in the book, then the team's kind of in sync that way.
Do you set it up such that there's circles of conversation about the book? Do those happen at a given time throughout the year or at certain locations?
We've done a bunch of different things that, really increases the level of learning engagement. It's about training is so many ways you can learn, but we want the continuous learners. You really won't make it in this company if you're not that way, because we push you to become the best version of you by giving examples of, others and things we're applying and looking at. But like I said, 10% when we open the book. So what we're speaking to usually is that 10, 20%, maybe 30 in a great company like ours.
Beyond reading, is there a habit or consistent practice that you feel like has given you the greatest leverage in your life?
It's got to be hard work. I know that sounds cliche. I would say,
how do you qualify that?
Pushing yourself to have a schedule that works for you. Like everybody's schedule is different. Everybody's productivity is different. How do you come with the same level of energy? We have another leadership consultant inside the company right now, talks about your, all kinds of ways to give yourself energy. Yeah. But, if you meet somebody for the first time, you want that experience to be memorable. Yeah. You want that experience you want to be on your A game, if you will. Right. How do you do that every day? How do you perform every day? So to me, hard work is about being peak performance state. And that's where you have to have your breaks. You have to have your balance. You can't be all go, go, go. And I think you got to really get used to your routine and perfecting your routine of what works for you. Everybody's different. Some people prefer email all day long, every day. They might send 3 emails a day. That's not me. Maybe that was me 10 years ago, but then you changed too. So the transformation's about, you need initiatives, right? We all need, again, that's what's great about the triangle is if it's just me and you working, then this third person's not holding us accountable to get anything done. Right. We could just be like, hey, you want to go to lunch? But then you get the third person, it's like, hey, what's going on? And how do we balance that workout, right? It's like if you're studying with somebody and, one person's doing all the work, so we call it breakthrough initiatives, right? we lined up a whole bunch of breakthrough initiatives when we first started the transformation. This building is one of them. No one, I shouldn't say no one, very little people thought we would accomplish this building. Millions of dollars investment, a ton of hard work went into it. We care about little details. And that's an initiative. You know, I think, you know, whether you create 3 initiatives, 5 initiatives, 100 initiatives, you got to execute the next one. So that's kind of probably one of our things that led to the transformation, is getting that focus. Individually, as departments, we like to get the team. We say as managers, as leaders, we really want to get your individuals to their breakthrough as quick as possible. It's not like we want them to break and breaking point and quit or leave the company. Well, have we seen it happen? Of course. But it hasn't happened in a long time. We mostly want to see them get to their breakthrough as quick as humanly possible, because it's about them. It's always about them. It's really never about, can a manager do something for you? Can you come in, you hire the best people, they got to do it. And then that's how you support the customer better, right? It's letting them figure out how to break through and support the customer better, you know, because everything we do is about the customer experience.
Bryan, I imagine that there are going to be folks that listen or watch today and they want to get to know you better. They feel like they've gotten to know you really well in this conversation, I'm sure. How do you like to be found? How can folks reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, my email is brian.wagner@chintpower.com.
And it's Bryan with a Y.
Bryan with a Y. Yep.
Bryan with a Y. If you could leave every person that you meet with one thing, what would it be?
Just be yourself, and be genuine in what you're trying to do with people. Be transparent. Work hard and let the chips fall as they do.
Last question. What will have changed as a result of the work that you're doing?
One of the biggest legacy that I think we'll leave at Chint is the amount of jobs that have been created with our partners. I mean, I'm so excited about the thousands of jobs that get created by our partners and by the jobs we've created inside the company and outside the company with our partners. The American construction jobs. I'm so excited about that. I think our legacy, though, as a, you know, from an environmental standpoint, you know, being involved in 20,000 projects, I don't know the environmental benefit exactly there, but I know we're certainly getting further, you know, like further advancing the climate goals compared to when we started at CPS. And I'm excited about that as well.
Bryan Wagner is the president and general manager of CPS America. And I have certainly enjoyed the conversation that we've had today, digging in not just to the life of someone who's gone from sales to leadership, but an organization that has gone through all the doldrums and growth and shrinking, number one, no longer number one, back to number one. The learning that I've incorporated in the mindset, the models, the mental models that are incorporated from this team have helped me think about how I'm structuring my small business of less than 100 people. I'm sure that for you listening or watching, the feeling is mutual. If you really enjoyed this conversation, the best way that you can say thank you to Bryan or myself is by sharing the episode with somebody else that you know is in the same position. They're trying to grow their career, their business. They want to get into clean energy, looking for a great company to work for. Please share this content out with them. If you want to reach out on LinkedIn, we'll leave all the notes for how to do that in the show notes on all the various platforms, from podcasts to YouTube to where else you may have found us. Perhaps you are on Instagram. You'd want to be one of our newest social media followers in that case. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. I recognize, as I said in the outset, time is your only non-renewable resource. Super appreciate that you have invested it here with us. I hope that you get a return for that investment. Just as I always say thank you to our sponsors who also help make sure that this show is free to you. You got to pay attention. They take care of the rest. Their return on investment is your attention and your time here learning about this industry. They invest so that you can grow. I'm super grateful for them. If you would go to mysuncast.com/sponsor, you can learn about the ways that you can incorporate their products or services into your business and grow as well. And as we always say, I was reminded during this interview, it turns out showing up is more than half the battle. It's 90% of the battle. Thanks again for showing up, Solar Warrior. it is more than half the battle.